What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. Okay, y'all. This is my sixth time trying to film this. I feel like my head is not in the game today. I feel like I keep stumbling over my words. I feel like I'm not making sense. So I'm gonna try my best to make this make sense. I don't know what's happening, but if I seem rambly or all over the place, I really apologize. And I have notes, so I don't know what's going on. I'm just tired or something. I don't know, but I need to get this done because I have somewhere to be in an hour. So let's do it. But before I do that, I have a new setup. I really like it. I think I like it better than my last setup, which is literally in the same room, just in a different location. But I feel like my last setup seemed really cluttered, and this seems more put together. And I have a big chair, so I feel important. So I don't know if it's just me, and I feel like there was a few people in my comments in my last video that said something like this, but let me know if you feel like this. But ever since the breakup in 911, I have felt so clocked out of this show. And I don't mean that in the sense of I've lost interest, because I haven't, but I've just not felt super engaged when I've been watching it recently. I hate to say that because I feel like it makes me sound like I was only watching it for Buck and Tommy, but I wasn't. I still love the show very much, but it's just felt so empty since the breakup. So I don't know. Let me know if you've been feeling like that, which might be the reason why I'm kind of all over the place today, but whatever. We're gonna try our best to get through it. We're going to be reviewing episodes 7 and 8 of season 8 today, which is going to be our last 2 episodes until March, because we're going on break. March is such a long time. That's 3 months, bro. What am I supposed to do for 3 months until it comes back on? I have to fill this gap in my content. I'll figure it out. But that's pretty much it for the intro. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Okay, episode 7. Maddie and Chimney come over to Buck's loft to see how he's doing since the breakup, and they bring him, wine and stuff just to kind of to cheer him up. So they ask him how he's been doing, and he's like, yeah, I've been doing okay. He says he's been feeling a little lonely, but he's getting by. He also lets them know that he's picked up a hobby since the breakup, which happens to be baking.
Seems like a lot of loaf.
Don't discourage him. I love loaf.
I don't know that this qualifies as a more positive response.
Which is not what I really expected from Buck, which I don't know. I knew he liked to cook because he learned a lot of his cooking tips from Bobby, but baking was something I didn't expect. Because baking is hard, but he's using baking as a substitute for every time he wants to text and or call Tommy. Which I'm okay, yeah, that's pretty healthy, other than doing something super reckless like drinking or smoking or, things like that. So once they come in, he tells her that he's making one of her favorite cheeses, which is baked brie.
That's my baked brie.
You baked brie?
Yeah, your favorite. What's wrong? Why do you look like you're gonna barf?
I can't really do the stinky cheese right now.
Brie is not a stinky cheese.
It is to me, so if we could just...
And he's really confused, so he's like,
The only time I've ever seen you turn down brie is when you were pregnant with... You're pregnant.
he finds out she's pregnant by her not wanting to eat the brie he made her, which I'm that is so crazy. It's not crazy because he's her brother and he obviously would know her behaviors, but I'm dang, imagine because obviously they didn't want to tell him right away because one, Chimney thinks he's gonna go off and tell everybody, but two, I think Maddie's a little nervous because it's just the first trimester and they don't really know what's gonna happen yet. So, but once he finds out, I think they're a little concerned about how he's gonna react, because remember when Maddie brought it up to Chimney about having a second kid, Chimney was obviously concerned because of what happened last time when she went through postpartum depression, and it was a whole thing. I think they might be a little bit worried about how he's gonna react. So at first he's like,
This isn't good news.
Like, I expected him to be like concerned because of the postpartum depression thing, but then he's just like,
This is the best news. Guys, hey, come here. I'm so happy for you.
they also said they didn't want to tell him because he's going through this hard time, and they didn't want to like rub their good news in his face, which I also understand too. But I don't know, I feel like that would low-key make him feel better because he's getting another niece, because we see how good he is with G and like how close they are, so it's just like really cute. I feel like that would be great news for him. So 118 get called to the set of Hot Shots, the set that Bobby used to work on as the tech advisor, and they had like an accident with one of the stunt doubles because remember, Gerard is now working on the set of Hot Shots in place of Bobby. Gerard allowed Brad to work one of the machines that had this stunt double on it. The stunt double ended up like falling off of the machine and like is dangling in the air. So they get called to help him out. And one thing we learned from this call, like while Buck and Eddie are helping the stunt double, Bobby stays on the ground. He's like talking to Gerard. And we learned that Brad isn't particularly fond of Gerard because when Brad comes around, like his body language towards Gerard versus Bobby is like night and day. Like, he is very standoffish with Gerard. He doesn't really say much to him, but obviously when he comes around Bobby, he like hugs him. He's like, it's so good to see you, like it's great to have like real talent back on the set. And I'm just like, dude, their dynamic is so crazy. Like, because I remember saying in one of my earlier reviews for this season that like Brad had went away, and I was like, God, I really love Brad. Like, I wish he would have stayed around longer. So I was fully not expecting them to bring him back this season. So when I saw that he was back, I was like, oh my God, Brad's gonna be back. Like, he's just such a funny character. Like, I know he's supposed to be this like over dramatic like actor, but and like he like annoys Bobby, and Bobby doesn't particularly care for him. But their dynamic, I think, is really funny. Because Brad is like totally oblivious to the fact that Bobby is just like so over him. Skipping to this next scene, at the 118, Buck is fixing the rest of the Firehouse lunch. He made baked ziti, freshly baked garlic bread, and I think banana pudding for dessert. I'm not sure if that's right, but he made that, and like they're questioning him like, when did you become such a master baker? And he's like, ever since Tommy dumped me, like I bake every time I have the urge to text or call him. And he expresses to them that he's always like checking his phone to see, or he always has the urge to check his phone to see if Tommy has texted him. So lo and behold, Buck picks up his phone and it's already on Tommy's contact, but he's bubbling, which means he's typing out a text.
Oh my God.
What?
He's bubbling me. Tommy is bubbling me right now, finally.
So what did he say?
They went away. I don't get it. Why would he type and then not send anything?
And so Hen and Eddie are trying to give him realistic solutions to be like, you know, maybe he just changed his mind or whatever. And so he's like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna call him. So Eddie quickly takes his phone. And he's like, nope, I can't let you do that.
Sorry, can't let you do that, buddy.
Okay, come on, give it back.
Which honestly, W Eddie, because as much as I want Buck and Tommy to get back together, or at least for them to just talk, do I think Buck should call Tommy? No, because Tommy was the one that ended things. You know what I mean? So I feel like because we didn't get any type of closure from that breakup, you know what I mean? Which I think makes it so hard, is what's making it so hard to process, because we got no information other than what Tommy said. So you know how that went. So do I think Buck should call Tommy? No. I think if Tommy wants to explain himself further, he should reach out to Buck. But other than that, Buck can't really do anything from his side of things. You know what I mean? Like, let's say he did call Tommy. What would he say exactly? Like, I don't know if I'm sure he's thought long and hard about it, because you see how much he bakes. So clearly he thinks about it all the time. But I'm just wondering, what would he say if he were to text and or call Tommy? Like I just feel like there's nothing really for him to say. So W Eddie for taking his phone. But he ends up taking his phone and giving it to Hen, and they're basically playing hot potato with his phone.
We know you're serious.
We know you're serious.
Eddie,
That's what scares us.
And He's like running around the table like trying to get his phone back, and he literally turns to Bobby and he's like, Bobby, here's my phone, like help me. And Bobby just like rolls his eyes, because I'm like, these are his literal children. So during all this commotion, the fire chief ends up coming up there, and he's like, you know, he asks to have a word with Bobby, but they all just look really embarrassed because they got caught in the act of doing something really stupid.
I didn't realize you were stopping by today.
Bobby ends up having a talk with the fire chief, and basically the fire chief tells him that Brad hates Gerard and he wants Bobby to come back to the set of Hot Shots. And so Bobby's basically like, you know, I'm a fire chief, like I can't just drop my Firehouse to go back to a set. And he's like, also Brad's just like a TV star, like he can't just snap his fingers and make something happen. And apparently their organization, you know, donates a lot to like the firehouses or something like that. So basically they have a lot of power over them. So he wants Bobby to basically go talk to Gerard to make him more likable towards Brad and his other staff. So once Bobby gets to the Hot Shot set, he basically tells Gerard that they need to have a talk. So he tells Gerard that Brad went to the fire chief and complained about Gerard's behavior towards him. And to be really honest, Gerard is like trying really hard to make Brad like him. But is Gerard the most likable person? No. And we know this from experience. You know what I mean? So, because even the way he treats the other staff, like he's telling this girl like his latte is lukewarm. And he doesn't even call her by her name. He calls her kid. So it's just like, just because you have a higher position in any job doesn't mean you get to treat people that are maybe on the lower totem pole than you any less. Like they're still people, right? Which is what Bobby's trying to explain to him. He's like, that girl has a name and it's not Kid, it's Haley. So he's basically telling him he just needs to be more polite and approachable. Maybe smile more, say thank you and please and thank you and stuff like that.
Look, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from about etiquette.
I ain't wrong. I know everything.
Is that sarcasm? I can't tell.
Literally during this conversation, Brad comes up behind Gerard and Gerard's trying to like be buddy with him. He's like, hey, like Brad, and he totally disregards Gerard and goes to hug Bobby.
¿Qué pasa, numero uno?
Bobby.
Hey,
and Gerard is trying so hard. He's like,
Big rescue scene tonight, Brad. You're gonna crush. If you want to go over anything, I'm here.
I'm good, thanks.
and literally Gerard is so distraught by this. He literally starts crying.
hey, are you crying? Why are you crying? Vincent.
Because you could tell he really likes this job, because like literally one, he gets to be in control of people, which is what he loves to do. But let's not forget, Gerard is also a really big fan. Like him personally, well, I think he was lying when he was like he's not a big fan of the show but his sister is. I think he actually is a big fan of the show, and obviously he's a big fan of Brad. So for your kind of someone you look up to not like you is like really heartbreaking. Gerard pretty much ends up asking Bobby if he could take Brad out to dinner to basically convince him that Gerard is not, you know, that bad of a person. And Bobby's just like,
Vincent, the guy's a TV star. I can't just ask him out to dinner.
Yes, you can. You want to know why? He loves you, and he hates me.
which like, yeah, like I feel like anything Bobby would ask Brad to do, like he would do it in a heartbeat. So skipping to the dinner scene, Bobby does end up asking Brad out to dinner, and they go to this really nice restaurant, and their waiter just so happens to be like a really big fan of Brad Torrance, just like everybody else that they come across like in the show. But they get seated and the waiter like takes their drink orders and stuff like that, and she goes to make them. So Bobby starts talking to Brad. He's like, I wanted to talk to you about like Gerard. And Brad is such a kid, because his reaction is so like,
Don't want to talk about him for more.
and he's like, you know, I know Gerard can come across as like really like, you know, self-centered and stuff, but like he's really not that bad of a guy. So during this conversation, the waiter comes back, gives him his martini, and gives Bobby his, I think he ordered a mineral water, I think, because Bobby doesn't drink. She ended up giving Brad his martini, and this is when Brad's privilege starts showing, because she out of the kindness of her heart, ended up giving Brad an extra olive in his martini. And he tells her, he's basically like, how many olives did I order? And she's like, 3. And he's like, so why am I looking at 4 olives in my martini? And she's like, I'm so sorry, like I just thought maybe you would want a bonus one. And he's like,
If I wanted 4, then I would have ordered 4.
Brad, take it easy.
and I'm sitting here looking like, Brad, like, who is this? This is not you, diva. Like, what are we doing? Because, like, I honestly, honest to God, was kind of shocked that Brad was doing this. Because, one, does this happen in real life? Absolutely. We've heard so many instances where celebrities think they're holier than thou and think they can treat service staff and waitresses and waiters and stuff like that like they're garbage just because they are waiters. Like, that has made absolutely never made any sense to me, and I don't know why people do that. Like, if you are rude, even if you're not a celebrity, like if you are just rude to service people just because you can be, like, you're actually a bad person. Like, that is actually crazy. Like, why? Because there's literally no reason for that. But he's being really, really nasty to her, and like Bobby's just like, okay, Brad, just let it go. Like, you can literally like fish one out. He's like, yeah, like you're right. So then he looks at his olives, and his olives are pitted, and he asked her for a pit in olives. And let's not forget that Brad has a really, really thick English accent, so it can be kind of hard to understand what he's saying. So she's like really apologetic, and she's like, I'm so sorry, like it was my mistake. And he's like blowing up on her. He's like,
Are you hard of hearing, or are you just daft?
It was my mistake.
I think we have well established that.
Is it your first day on the job, love?
so Bobby gets on him, and he's like, Brad, like that's enough. You owe her an apology. And he's like, what for? And he's like,
You want to play an authentic fire captain? Well, the only thing I can buy you as is an entitled man-child. Now go say you're sorry.
yeah, because like it literally takes 0 effort to be nice. You know what I mean? So this whole scene is like so funny because like he gets up in Brad's face and he's like, so you're gonna go apologize to her? And Brad's like,
Or what?
Or I'm gonna kick your limey ass.
and I'm like, limey? Like, I don't know. I'm sorry, I was so in the moment, and then that just made me like bust out laughing because I was like, wow. But honestly, W Bobby, because I'm like, bro, Brad was so out of line, like it's actually crazy. After that whole altercation, back at the firehouse, Hen, Eddie, and Buck are like watching something on Hen's phone, and so Bobby comes up to them and he's like, I asked you to watch the rig, not watch TikTok. And they're like, technically it's TMZ. So then Bobby's like, oh my gosh, like please tell me that's not. And it's his video of him and Brad at the restaurant, like getting into it. And so like they were wondering, like, why did you even go out to dinner with him? And he tells him that Brad told the fire chief that he wanted him to come back to the set of Hot Shots. And Buggy's like, are you leaving us? And she's like,
Relax, Buck. I think that dream died when Cap here threatened to kick Brad.
Bobby's telling him, like, no, like, if it's between ticking off the fire chief and working under Brad, like, I would definitely choose the other one. And before he can even finish his sentence, Brad comes up behind him, and they're like, he's behind me, isn't he? And literally the way Eddie starts recording,
He's behind me, isn't he? Brad?
like, no, because that is literally me. Like, that would literally be me, bro. So Brad comes up to Bobby, and he's like, basically he tells him, like, the way you like told me off in the restaurant was like so authentic, and like I need that in my performance. So he basically went to the fire chief and cleared it with the fire chief that the fire chief allowed him to shadow Bobby, like basically temporarily join the 118.
I talked to your chief, and he agrees. I'm gonna shadow you 24/7.
And I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, how could he allow that to happen? So basically, Brad is now a part of the 118 temporarily because he put his character in the show in a coma. So that's pretty much how we end episode 7. Brad is such a character, bro. Like, I love him too much. So getting into episode 8, we don't open up the episode like this, but Eddie, you know, is still kind of missing Chris because Chris is still in Texas. He ends up calling Chris or FaceTiming him and, you know, asking him like if he still watches Hot Shots.
Never believed this, but Brad Torrance, the main guy from Hot Shots,
Been hanging out at the Firehouse.
Really?
He's like, yeah, I can probably get his autograph for you. And in my mind, I'm like, is this his way of trying to bribe him to come home? Like, I get where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of desperation because he misses his son so much and all he wants is for him to come home. But I'm like, you, like, don't bribe him. Like, don't try to bribe him. You know what I mean? It didn't work because Chris is like,
You'll send it to me?
I meant the room here. Yeah, that's fine. I'll send it.
and so then Chris lets him know that he basically joined the chess club because he was going to play chess with his grandpa. And Eddie is just feeling, which understandably, he's just feeling really left out of Chris's life because, you know, nobody's telling him anything. Like, we don't really know how often he talks to his parents, and it doesn't seem like it's a lot because he doesn't really know these things that Chris is getting into. So I don't really know where they're going with this Eddie Chris storyline. I'm like honestly drawing a blank. Like when it comes to like predictions of where it could go, I have no clue. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So, like I said, Brad is officially a part of the 118 temporarily. So they get called out on a call, and Brad is just so eager. Instead of actually doing what he's supposed to be doing and shadowing Bobby, so basically just standing, taking notes and like, you know, waiting for orders if they need his help, because let's be clear, he is not certified to be a firefighter. He just is so eager to help and do anything he can. So he goes up to Bobby and he's like, what can I do? Like, where can I help? And Bobby's like, well, why don't you just stay back here and take notes for right now? He's like, okay, yeah, like I'll do that. Obviously, he doesn't listen because sometime during the call, he sees a girl trapped in her car because there's this big pile-up car accident. And he goes over to her and he's like, ma'am, are you okay? Like, wake up. And he ends up pulling her out of the car and carrying her over to Bobby. Now, there are certain, like, because Bobby explains this to him later in the episode, but there are certain precautions that they have to go through before they remove someone from a scene. Like, they have to check for head injuries, spinal injuries, you know, there may be internal injuries they can't see. So there's a reason why they don't just immediately extract someone from a scene. He sees Brad carrying this girl over to the gurney, and Bobby is like really upset. And so is Hen, because Hen is like the medical professional on the scene. So she asking him like, did you check her vitals? Did you check for any type of head injuries? And he's like, I got her out the bloody car, which is just like so arrogant of him because clearly Brad's an actor. So obviously he's going to do it in a like more dramatic way, which is not why people become firefighters. People become firefighters to save people, not for the glory or anything. So once they're back at the firehouse, Bobby, you know, tells everyone what to do, and then he's like, Brad, I need a word with you. So Brad is eager for like notes of like how he did on the call and stuff, and Bobby basically ends up telling him,
What you did back there was reckless and stupid. And if she'd had a spinal injury and you carried her around like that, you could have paralyzed her.
And so Brad is like, okay, like I get it. So he takes out his notebook and starts taking notes. And then Brad is like, but we tend to skip over these things because they're a bit tedious in the TV show. And he's like,
It's because it's fake, Brad. You're not a real firefighter. You are an observer here.
one thing I will say about Brad is one, I feel like anything that Bobby does in his eyes, like Bobby can do no wrong. But he takes the criticism well. Obviously, he's an actor, so he has to be able to take criticism. But he takes it with stride, because if Bobby ever talked to me like that, I probably would cry. Because I would be like, damn, like, why did I mess up like that? Like, what did I do? Like, he really takes it with stride, so I will give him that. But later in the episode, you know, Eddie kind of starts talking to Brad, and because he compliments him on, like, him cleaning the bumper or whatever. And during this conversation, Eddie kind of ends up opening up to Brad about his son, because he basically tells him that Chris is a really big fan of him and he would love an autograph. And, you know, Brad's like,
Why don't you bring him to the station? Meet me in person. I would, but he lives in Texas with his grandparents.
That must be odd.
Hardest 3 months of my life.
he doesn't fully tell him about the whole situation, but he just tells him that, you know, Chris has been gone for 3 months and it's been really hard. And Brad opens up to Eddie about how he has a son.
My son was 9 when I left to test for a pilot on the CW. It never went. But I never did quite make it back to England.
And and he was saying now he's fully grown up and he's, you know, training to become an architect and he's getting married in the spring. And Eddie's just like, oh my god, like that's so great, Brad, like that's good for you. And Brad tells him in, you know, not so many words that him and his son don't talk anymore. And this is the most real that we've ever seen Brad, which I love. Because I love, you know, I love Brad's dramatic, goofy, very British side. But I also love to see him be so real and vulnerable in this moment about something. He basically ends up giving Eddie some advice. And he's like,
Don't let that gap between you grow another inch.
To be real, I don't know how else Eddie could fix this situation between him and Chris without just giving Chris time, which obviously it's been 3 months, 3 very long months, but at the same time, like, clearly Chris is not ready to forgive him yet, and it's gonna take a while, you know what I mean? And I know it's really hard for Eddie to just stand back and watch his son grow up and do all these things that he doesn't know about and like all these accomplishments, but his solution, which we are going to talk about, I don't know if it's the best thing, but whatever. So during another call, they got called to this guy who's thinking about jumping from this ledge. And, you know, they're trying to talk him down and he just feels hopeless and whatnot. And a lot of time during these calls, you know, people obviously recognize Brad. And every time when they start recognizing him on a call, he kind of gets shy about it, because even though Brad loves the attention, like every time someone comes up to him and is like, you're Brad Torrance, he's like, I am. During these calls, he gets a bit more shy because I genuinely think he doesn't want to be recognized during these. I think he genuinely wants to be seen as a real firefighter. And it just doesn't work out in his favor. So during this call, he's just like standing by in front of the truck, which I'm like, if he doesn't want to get recognized, he should just stay in the truck. But whatever. So he's standing there and people obviously are there recording this guy about to jump off a ledge, which I have never understood that. Like, that is so cruel for people to just gather around this guy attempting to take his life. Like, be so for real. But one of the guys clocks, you know, Brad by the truck and he's like, are you like that guy from that show? And Brad is like, nope, I'm just a regular guy. And he's like, no, you are. So basically they start crowding him and asking him for selfies and autographs and stuff like that. And Brad is like so humble about it because he genuinely doesn't want to get recognized. And so while they're trying to talk this guy down, this guy sees Brad and he's like, is that Brad Torrance? And they're like, yeah, like that's him. And he's like, so basically they get this idea that they should get Brad to come over and talk to him because obviously he's a fan. So Bobby goes over to Brad and Brad thinks he's about to get in trouble because all the people are crowding him. So he's like, I'm so sorry, Cap. I'm sorry, Cap. And so Bobby's like, Brad, we need your help. And Brad's like taken aback and he's like, you need my help? And he's like, you want to be a hero? Like, now's your chance. So they take Brad over to the guy and Brad basically starts talking to him, and you know, the guy is confiding in him and telling him how his show has gotten him through such a hard time because when his wife left him, he binge watched the first 3 seasons and like he really loves the show. And so Brad is just feeling like kind of sorry for himself, and he's like, well, you need to change the channel because he's in a coma, and what the network doesn't know yet is he's not waking up. And this guy is like, you're killing off your character. And Brad is basically just like, yep, like I am. He gets like really distraught because he's like, you cannot do that. Like, do you know how much your character means to people? And Brad doesn't believe him. He's like, yeah, maybe 2 days on TMZ, but after that nobody will remember me. And he's like, that's not true. And I can't help but feel like this scene is like based off of real events, because that's how I feel like TV shows can mean that much to people. You know what I mean? Like, you get really attached to the characters of a TV show, and you never know. Literally, someone's TV show or movie or whatever could be the reason why they still are around. Like, it's that serious. You know what I mean? Because it gives them something to feel, like, maybe they feel seen, maybe they feel represented, maybe they just like, it makes them happy, you know what I mean? So this is real. Like, this scene is so real when this guy is like, you know, your TV show is helping me get through and it means so much to people, because that is so, like, that is a real life thing. So during this, Brad I mean, for a minute, it seemed like Brad was not helping, because he's like, you know, why don't we join hands and go over this, like, ledge together? And at the bottom of the thing, Chim and Hen are, like, blowing up the thing, but it takes a while for them to blow it up. So Bobby's just on his mic, like, Chim, 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 Chim. He's like, it's almost done, Cap. But at the end of the day, you know, he tells him, like, you cannot kill off this character. Like, it means too much to people. And so Brad basically ends up telling him, he's like,
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to promise you that Captain Race Banner is going to wake up from his coma on one condition. You get down from there. Return to terra firma.
And so the guy's like, you promise? And he's like,
Captain's honor.
He ends up getting off the ledge, and I love this scene because Brad was introduced as this, like, really goofy, silly, you know, character, but I love when we get the lore behind silly, goofy characters, because they always have some type of, like, past and things like that. So, like, it was really, really, like, good to see that side of Brad. After this, we skip to the scene where Eddie is in his house and he's looking through houses, surprise, in Texas. So, as he's looking through, you know, these houses, someone comes and knocks on his door. So he tells him to come in, and I don't know who he expected it to be, because when he saw it was Buck, he was shocked. And I was like, who did you expect it to be? So Buck comes in, and Buck is, like, having a full-on, like, like, manic episode. He's like, I almost relapsed and I almost called Tommy, and I baked every piece of flour that I have in my house, so have a scone. And he literally hands him a scone, and he basically is just going to Eddie's house to look for more baking supplies so he can keep baking. And, you know, Eddie looks super, like, guilty, and so he has his iPad on his table, and while Buck is turned around, he, like, flips it over, but Buck ends up turning around and seeing him flip it over. So he's like,
What was that? What? You flipped the tablet. Did I? What are you looking at, Eddie?
so, you know, basically he was like, okay, never mind, like, it's your privacy, like, you know, I respect your privacy. But he ends up picking up the iPad anyway, and he sees that he's looking at houses. So he's like, oh, you're thinking about moving? And he's like, that's like, and he's like, wow, like, that's great. And so he's like, but where are you gonna find houses like this in LA? And Eddie basically has to bite the bullet and tell him. So he's like,
They're not in LA, they're in El Paso.
and so Buck is like, you think about moving to Texas? And so Eddie just basically tells him, like,
I'm tired of missing out on all my son's big moments before he grows up.
so, you know, Buck is really understanding, a really understanding best friend. So he's like, all right, well, I don't really trust you to pick out a good home, so I'm gonna stay and help you. And, you know, Eddie's like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm gonna help you, like, pick out a house. So, you know, Eddie's, like, really happy that his friend, I guess, isn't trying to, like, stop him. So he's just like, all right, like, I'll fix you a cup of coffee. So here's the thing. After that, you know, Buck is sitting on the couch, and he has this kind of realization moment, like this look on his face. And so, you know how it goes on TikTok and all the other social media platforms. All of the toxic buddy shippers are like, oh, he loves him. He realized his love. And I'm like, and I'm going to give you a realistic situation. Let's say your best friend of, I don't know, this is maybe, you know, 8 years, 7, 8 years, that you work with every day, you hang out with, you know his family, you know his kid, decides to up and move to a state all the way across the country. Your best friend, right? Would you not be distraught? Or maybe at least a little disappointed that they're gonna move? Like, obviously you want to support them because their reason for moving is a valid one, but you wouldn't be a little disappointed? So I want to know why why do, like, toxic buddy shippers take every little reaction that either Buck or Eddie has, and they're just like, it's love. And I'm like, no. And you know what? I'm going to tell you something. I have been so confident for so long that Buck and Eddie are not going to end up together. Not because I don't want them to. Because at this point, do I? I just feel like it would feel really forced. But I've been so confident that they're not gonna end up together. But you know, the Buck and Tommy breakup really gave me whiplash and really took me by surprise. So I feel like I really just don't trust the writers anymore. I don't know what they're gonna do, because they could do anything at this point. And you know what? If they end up putting Buck and Eddie together, I just don't know. You know? I don't know. So, but anyways, moving on from that. We end this episode with Buck, Eddie, and Chimney. They make it into the show. What show, you might ask? Hot Shots. So Buck and Eddie are nurse number 1 and 2, and Chimney happens to be the doctor. So Brad keeps his promise to the guy he talked off the ledge, and his character wakes up from the coma. Chimney is the doctor, and this scene makes me laugh too much. But what really put the cherry on top for me with this scene is the bad acting.
From what we heard, you saved every last one of those orphans.
You're a real hero, Captain.
I wonder whose idea that was to put them in the show, because that was golden. That was great. That was amazing. I love that. So yeah, basically that's how we end episode 8. Like I said, these 2 episodes, they weren't as entertaining to me, and I don't really know where a lot of these storylines are going, but I guess we'll just have to wait until March to find out. But yeah, guys, that's gonna be it for our reviews until March. Let me know if you guys have any ideas for, you know, content for me to fill in this little gap. You know what, guys? I'm gonna ask you something. I never mentioned this on this channel, but along with 911, I do watch 911 Lone Star, and I've never reviewed it on this channel because I have never found that 911 Lone Star was as popular as 911, but I love it too. But this recent Tarlos storyline, Tarlos meaning TK and Carlos, has me on the edge of my seat, and I'm thinking about making a video. So let me know if any of you guys watched 911 Lone Star, please let me know, because I would absolutely love to make a video about that. That's pretty much it for this video. If you guys liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment down below of how you felt about these 2 episodes and any thoughts you have, or any questions you might have for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!